All right, so we are going to talk through how to develop the absolute best chest you can. So obviously, we're starting with a bench press, right? Because you can't have a good chest without a barbell bench press. Right? Wrong. I have not done barbell bench press in a very long time. I did start out with it. Let me put it this way. This is what my chest looked like when I was benching over 300 pounds. And that was the point at which I realized that there's more to developing a chest than just doing the classic barbell bench press. I'm not saying you can't build a good chest with it. You absolutely can. Lots of people have. But just maybe there's more efficient ways to do it. And I believe if you watch this video, you will be able to find out a more efficient way to develop your best chest. Let's go. Now, to develop your best chest, you're gonna wanna hit it from multiple angles. So you guys all know that you have your upper and your mid chest. But do you also know that those work at the same time? So a lot of times people view it as chest versus back. That's the wrong way to view it, because chest is much simpler than the back is. What you should view it more as is chest is more similar to the lats. You see where you have your fibers that are going this way, fibers that are going this way, fibers that are going this way. Same thing as the lats. So with our back exercises, what we need is we need more exercises at more angles in order to more efficiently hit the back musculature. For the chest, you really don't need that many. So my first suggestion to you is focus on the portion of the chest that has the most meat. And what is that? That's going to be the mid to lower chest. Now, I know that goes against a lot of people's bodybuilding knowledge because they're like, everybody has a good lower and mid chest. It's like, you only need the upper chest. Like, well, if you develop a good mid and lower chest, yes, you might get a little bit disproportionate to the upper chest, but as long as you're making sure that you keep up with this work, you should be fine. So perhaps you start with more of the incline variations, but that doesn't mean that you don't spend time working on that mid to lower chest. And those are gonna be best work through motions like this, nice, stable. Make sure that you're getting yourself down deep into the position. And the way that I tell people to view chest work, or really any work for that matter, view it like a spring. So as you get to this more lengthened portion, I might start my eccentric off by going very quickly and then slow into the bottom, explode out. Slow into the bottom, explode out. And that is probably the most efficient way to do it. Do you need to have a pause? Maybe, maybe not. But as long as you're making sure you go nice and slow into that bottom portion and then exploding out, especially if you haven't been doing this in the past, you are going to see some gains for your chest that you've never seen before. All right, we're moving on to an incline press variation. If you want to do your incline presses before you're flat, that's perfectly fine. But if you want to develop the biggest absolute chest possible, you're probably going to want to spend more time focusing on the mid to lower chest. If you want to develop an aesthetic chest, which obviously you all are going for, then maybe you do spend a little bit more time on the upper. Now, the reason I'm bringing you guys over to this machine is to talk about a couple things. One, you'll often see people bring their hands in like this and they press like this. And it's like, you can see it's almost like, it's not a natural position for a lot of people. And they're like trying to do this really awkward, nice and tight thing because somebody told them that a closer hand placement is better for the upper chest. There's nuance to it, right? If your structure is a little bit wider, maybe you need to have your hands a little bit wider in order to make it work best as possible so that your elbow is actually stacking below the wrist. And then that's a much more comfortable pressing position than me arbitrarily forcing my hands to be in here where my elbow is going to be more bent. Now here's where things get a little bit controversial because for me, I have always found that working with this machine, if I really want to get my best upper chest stimulus, I actually have my hand placement a bit higher. And I found for myself that this does a better job at going directly into the upper chest. I'm not saying it's gonna be that way for everybody, but I know quite a few other people that also have experienced this themselves. Now, this machine in general, I'm actually not a huge fan of. And there's a very particular reason for that. And that reason the top of the motion. And as you get to the top of the motion, really what you're doing more than anything else is this right here, this portion of the movement is more triceps than it is chest. So if you're trying to force yourself through these reps and you're like, forcing it through, all you're really doing is working your triceps there, which is why when I perform this exercise, typically I will have a partner. And the partner will take, and they'll allow me to carry more of the load in the bottom. And as I get to here, they might help me through this portion. Or if I don't have a partner available to me, I may not even go all that way up. I might stop here because this little part here, it's not doing anything for your chest really. So spending more of your time in that bottom portion is gonna matter more than arbitrarily forcing yourself to lock out on an exercise that is not necessary for. Let's go. So let's talk through some limitations on certain machines that you'll have. So this machine, for example, I absolutely love this machine. It's got a very nice path. It's very stable, highly stable. And then you can just focus on pressing. No stability demands whatsoever, just pure output for the chest. Now, limitations. Take a look at this. Bottoms out right here, which for most people, probably not gonna be too much of an issue, but getting that little extra couple inches range of motion, just making sure the chest is fully lengthened before pushing back up, it's going to make a difference in the long run. So you wanna make sure that you at least have some form of exercise that's gonna allow you to fully lengthen the chest before coming back out. So if I was only to do one exercise for the rest of my life, it probably would not be this machine. Even though it's pretty good, it's still going to keep me limited from getting that chest fully stretched out. This is where dumbbells can become very helpful for people. So if you have machines that limit your range of motion, don't allow you to get that full depth, dumbbells can be very helpful there, but then you have to run into the stability demands. So it's all about cutting your losses, right? You can develop a very good chest with dumbbells, with barbells, and anybody who tells you otherwise, they just don't know what they're talking about. So I don't want to hear people going through and saying, oh, dumbbells, they suck for developing a chest. Barbells, they suck for developing a chest. No, they don't, and lots of people have developed good chests with those. But in the context of an overall program, if you want to develop your absolute best chest, then you're also trying to develop your absolute best arms, your best legs. What you want is you want less stability demands, because what that's gonna allow you to do is it's gonna allow you to put more energy into the chest and less into the surrounding muscle groups, less fatigue overall for the entire physique, so you can spend more time working on those body parts specifically and more time working specifically on the chest. So even if I get just as much of a stimulus from, say, a barbell bench press, if I get just as much stimulus from the barbell bench press on my chest, but I've then taken and I output a whole lot of extra energy in order to do that exercise, it's not going to be as efficient for the rest of my workout, because then I'm gonna have less energy. And the same thing for recovery for the next few days. That's why, more than anything, I think using the machines is going to give you better hypertrophic outcomes in the long run. Not necessarily because the exercises themselves are terrible, but because of the fact that they're going to require more of you in the general sense, and therefore you're not gonna be able to put out as much for everything else you're trying to work. One of the most common things that people will say to me is, well, I don't have that machine, I don't have this available to me. So I am going to get rid of that excuse for all of you by showing you one of the best machines that you can possibly use. The Smith machine. Ooh, I know. It's not real world strength, it's beach muscles. It doesn't count, doesn't work. All right, let's get over that. We don't need to be feeding our ego. We're trying to feed our muscles. So one of the most common questions I get is, what incline should I have it at when I'm doing this exercise? I'm gonna show you guys a more nuanced answer than just one individual answer. So here, obviously flat. Here, slight incline. A little bit more, but which one should you be using? My personal preference is this one right here. And that is simply because of the fact that it's enough of an incline that I'm gonna be hitting the upper chest, but not so much of an incline that I have to worry about recruiting my anterior delts too much. This is not going to be the same for everybody. And sometimes I switch it up, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I will actually take and do it all the way up here. And you might say, well, that's going to hit a lot of the front delt. And you're not wrong, but if you take an exaggerated arch, what really matters is the angle of the chest to the floor or to whatever you're pressing. So if I go like this and I angle my chest like this, this is still very much an upper chest movement. Now, if I had no arch whatsoever, if I kept my back flat, yeah, that's gonna be a lot of front delt right there. So really what ends up mattering is the overall angle of the chest to whatever you're pressing. In the same format, if I take and I put this just down to this one right here, yeah, it might not be quite as much of an incline as you want, but if you remain completely flat while pressing, it is still, to some level, going to hit the upper chest. So what really matters is how much of the upper chest are you trying to hit versus anterior delt, how much do you arch, and based on that, you can find a really comfortable position for yourself, and it doesn't have to be a hard set rule where you have to do it this way. Maybe sometimes you do it for 15 to see for a little while to see whether it works for you, 30, 45, play around with it. See what works best for your angle and for the way that you hold yourself. Now, as far as one of the other commonly, people like to get on about grip width a lot. So I'll see people who are told that a narrow grip is better for the upper chest, so they'll do it like this. But then you run into the same issues that we had when we were talking about the hammer strength, where really it's more of an elbow flex than anything else, triceps. So find that really nice, comfortable position for you where things are stacking well. Obviously, we want to go a little bit deeper, but these are in the way. So don't be like, oh, you're not touching your chest. Yeah, I would be if I could. But as you can see, suicide grip doesn't matter because you don't have to worry about the stability. And that is really the main thing it comes down to, is the less you have to worry about keeping yourself in the right position, the less you have to worry about the perfect angle. The more you set the machine up perfectly for your leverages, all you have to focus on is just working. And if you're trying to have to do all of this extra stuff in order to make sure that you can even put tension on the muscle group, like a lot of people do when they use dumbbells, barbells, there's just more efficient ways to do it. So don't take this as me saying that you can't do dumbbells, you can't do barbells. When we're talking about the best way to develop your chest, we're talking about the most efficient way to do it. And machines are just going to be much more efficient for it. And the last thing that we have not talked about yet is your isolation work for the chest. Maybe I'm unfamiliar with it, but I have not seen any literature to suggest that you can get better results from doing flies than presses. I could be missing something, drop it in the comments if I am, but pretty well every bodybuilder will have some form of isolation work for their chest as well. And we can't use the machine right now, but I just think the pec deck makes the most sense for it. Because similar to this machine right here, you just don't have to focus on anything other than driving into it. When you have cables, you have to focus on a lot more variables. You have to focus on height, making sure that things are going through the right way, and then you get to here and you're like starting to shake a little bit. I just think the pec deck is such an underutilized machine, both for the rear delts and for the pecs, but that doesn't mean you can't do things with dumbbells, I mean you can't do things with cables, but I think that is going to be your most efficient route if you want to work in isolation for the chest. So as long as you have your incline press, your flat, slash, here's one we didn't talk about yet, slash a slight decline, because there is nothing wrong with a slight decline press. So every once in a while, I will take and I'll do a slight decline just to really emphasize that mid to lower portion a little bit more. But if you want to do that, perfectly fine. If you want to do it as just flat, also perfectly fine. But as long as you are incorporating those three things, mainly the incline press and the flat press, the fly work is tertiary in my opinion. You will develop a very good chest if you're able to overload those movements over time. Now let's talk about how many sets per week, reps, etc., because that's the part where everybody starts to go off. As long as you are able to progress in your movements and you are taking things to or close to failure, you are going to experience some level of growth. Now, I would say start yourself off at somewhere around 4-ish sets, 4 or 5-ish sets in a session. That doesn't mean 4 or 5-ish sets in a week. If you do two sessions in a week, Maybe that means you end up doing like 8. That's perfectly fine. But you do not need to put out 20 sets for your chest, because every single time you do a chest exercise, you are going to be working the upper and the mid. You can't isolate them. So every time I do a set of a flat press, I'm still working the upper. It might not be to the same degree, but I still am working that. So every set that I do is going to be both working the upper and the mids. So if you view it as they're completely separate muscle groups, then you're gonna think you need way more volume than you do. But they are not, they are attached. So every time you work one, you're working the other, even if it's not to the fullest extent. We're talking biasing here, not completely isolating. So if you're doing 8 sets for your incline and 8 sets for your mid, you're actually doing 16 sets for both, just not fully biasing one or the other. So you don't need nearly as much volume as you think. I would say start off with 4 to 5 per session. And if you feel like you're recovering really well, that you could use more, go ahead. But I'm gonna go ahead and say that if you're getting over 10 sets in a week for your chest, you probably just aren't going that hard, or you're just hindering your recovery time. That's just my opinion on that. People can disagree. I'm perfectly okay with that. And if you want to experiment with higher volume, doing 20 sets for your chest, stuff like that, I just highly suggest you're not taking things to failure, including lengthened partials or anything like that, because that's just going to be way too much for your body to recover from. And all you're really gonna be doing at that point is just beating yourself up. But we could talk for so much longer about the intricacies of this, but because of the length of this video, I can already tell it's gonna be quite long, a lot longer than I meant it to be. We're gonna leave it at that. So I would say getting in your incline press, your flat to / decline press, and maybe a set or 2 of flies here and there. You're gonna get a perfectly developed chest. You just need to give it time. A lot of times people are very impatient about this, but if you give yourself the time to actually develop strength through these movements and get yourself very, very strong through it. We didn't talk about reps, I just remembered that. 4, 5, 6 reps plus, that's gonna be more than enough for you to maximize your growth. All right, we'll leave it there. And you guys, go develop a big chest. TNFO.